is Amoy from Difference in Skill, and this is episode 10 on Cards for Thoughts. And while you stare at my wallpaper, I'm just gonna bring up the page. So today I have the much anticipated, or luckily enough for me that this just came out the other day, we are doing Transcendent Dragon, Dragonic Novel Vague. I don't actually really know how to pronounce this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but let's start with all the effects. And let's start with the most powerful effect. So its first effect is an active ability. It's Limit Break 4, and I don't think you'll ever activate this twice in one turn. No, you can't. Anyway, so the cost is Counter Blast 3, and so Blast 3. Choose a card named Transcendent Dragon, Dragonic Novel Vague, basically Persona Blast, from your hand and discard it. Retire all your opponent's weird cards. Okay, so that's very powerful, and I'll be coming back to talk this because I want to go over all the effects first. So the second effect is the second continuous effect, or is a lot of continuous effect. So the second effect is during your turn, the effects of all your opponent triggers are negated. Very good. Once again, I'll come back to this. The next effect is that during a battle when this unit attacks a Vanguard, your opponent cannot normal call Great Zeros into the Guardian Circle from his or her hand. Basically, it just means you can't guard with Great Zeros, or you can't use 10Ks. His next effect is that if this card is in the Weird Guard Circle, he's minus 1000 permanently. And the last effect is just lowered. Alright, so let's start with his Limit Break 4 effect, because it's probably what everyone's hyping over all about this card. The second effect is probably the other reason why it's very hyped. Alright, so his first effect is, it's costly. It's a Persona Blast. It requires Soul Blast as well, but that's not really the big deal. So you get to destroy your opponent's entire field. So it's a -5 on your opponent, for a cost of basically -1 on yourself. So it's a very powerful ability. It's basically like Escapade the Blaster, except it's even more powerful because you don't have D-Ride after this. And basically, we don't really have to assume anything. Taking away all your opponent's weird cards is basically always good. It's very hard for your opponent to come back. It's likely very hard for your opponent to come back when they lose their entire field, unless you're really behind on the game and they're already really ahead. Or if they're Gold Paladins and they're Garmor and they just call 5 units back up. But of course, that's not really the big point because -5 is good regardless. So the second effect is during your turn. Oh, so let's go for a second effect. So basically during your turn, your opponents cannot activate triggers. Now this is a very good effect because not only does this card have the ability to take away all your opponent's weird cards if you have the cost, but as a game ender, this is very good because if you manage to kill your opponent with this card, in fact, you don't even have to use this card to actually defeat your opponent. But basically, if it's on your turn and you have this Riot and you basically defeat your opponent, they basically have no way of coming back because heal triggers don't work anymore. And at the same time, if you are ahead in damage and they are behind in damage, they can't use triggers to basically buff up their Vanguard to guard less. So it's a very powerful ability. Going on to his next effect is your opponent cannot use Great Zeros to guard. Now, that also makes this card very powerful because just the fact that if your opponent doesn't have a perfect guard, it's likely, and they're really behind on card, it's likely that they can't guard it anyway because I'm assuming this card will be able to break the 21 barrier very easily, especially in Kagero where you have Conroe. It's just going to become very easy to break that barrier. And the last part is that he's -1000 power. Now that's just really fair because if he's 13k on the Weird Guard, it just makes it too easy to hit 21, and it's really, and that's very unfair. Especially because he's a grade 4, meaning that if you had this on the Weird Guard, it means you have one on the Vanguard as well. And if you're hitting 21 on the Weird Guard as well, then that's just big damage, especially when your opponent can't use Great Zeros to guard. Oh wait, never mind. Your opponents can use Great Zeros to guard, but I mean, having the easy 21k, especially because it's 13 and you just need an AK booster, which is not really hard to generate in this clan. Very easy to get. and there's more than one card that actually gives him 10k, I think, or like it helps him breach the little like the 20k barrier. So that's just a very fair effect. Now let's talk about. So we basically talked about why the card's good. I mean, you can blow up your opponent's field if you have the cost. Your opponent can't use triggers and they can't guard great seals. Like that's really all good and all. Like I don't really need to specify why. Like we don't really need to go into detail as why those effects are good. Like this should be pretty obvious to most people. Let's talk about the downsides of this card. So first of all, he's grade 4. This is kind of why I think this card won't be as powerful as we think, because there's more reasons. But first of all, he's grade 4, meaning that making your deck, like your deck ratios of grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3s are kind of messed up now. Like I haven't really figured out how you would incorporate grade 4s in, except in the sense that if you're playing grade 4s and grade 3 at the same time, you're basically just playing more grade 3s, or we can kind of treat it as grade 3s. And whenever you kind of play more than 10 grade 3s, your deck is never that great because it won't be able to guard and everything. So that's one of the first reasons, is that it's probably a lot more easier to get grade stuck, unless people find a very like sustainable way to get up to grade 4 easily. Then I would kind of have to rethink that. Like I haven't really thought of many ways to actually get up, like ride successfully all the way up easily. The second part is about his Limit Break 4 effect. It's a pay 3 cost, and at the same time, it's the 3 soul and the 3 soul isn't really a big problem because nothing in Kagero really uses soul in the first place. The Persona Blast is kind of problematic because it means that if you're not playing a hefty amount of this card, like 3 or 4, there's a very high chance that you won't be able to activate the effect. At the same time, it's also Limit Break 4. Although this kind of transcends the fact that it's a Limit Break 4 ability, because it's more of the fact that he's a grade 4. Meaning that you have to go through the process of riding up to grade 4 to actually use this effect. And that can be quite the difficult task, as I've already talked about. And especially in Kagero, if you're planning to use this effect, you probably don't have much counterblast to use any other effects like Kinara, Berserk Dragon, and so on that can retire, meaning that your game all the way up to grade 4 would be very vanilla, meaning you just don't have enough effects to use and do throughout the game. And in this meta, it can be very it can be quite the downside, because like unlike other clans where they can activate their effects early to gain advantage, basically by playing this card you have none of it, or at least if you plan to use this effect, you basically have none of it. And that's really kind of what I have to. That's why I kind of think this card won't be as good as we think. Now going on to like his other effects, like I think everything else is quite good. Like the fact is just that you might not be able to find the right ratios to play this card, and at the same time, it's just that the effect puts your game at a vanilla too much, meaning that your opponent might actually gain enough advantage when you activate his effect. It might not become a big deal anymore, because like in this meta we're witnessing like a lot of like with Go Paladins we're witnessing like a lot of pluses, like basically a lot of clans now, if they're not really solo army, meaning that like a card by itself can do a lot of work already compared to other things, they can also, like their clans can also generate a lot of pluses like very easily. Like I think those are the really two different kind of like distinctions from the meta now, is that your Vanguard might be really good by itself, meaning it does like a really big hit, and if it's not doing like a really big hit, then it generates a lot of pluses. Now those are kind of what I thought this card wouldn't be as good. Now the other thing is that I already talked about the guard value, so let's go back to something good. He's 13k base, which makes him very powerful, and for a grade 4 I think it's necessary for him to be 13k or not. Not a really big factor in this meta, although it is sometimes kind of hard to build 18k columns, so that's kind of great. Especially when you retire 5 things, it's probably hard to actually hit 18 again, unless your opponent is sandbagging, then that's a kind of different story. Yeah, but I mean, he's a great game finisher, and in my opinion, I think if people don't play 4 of these, or like if they just use this as a game finisher, I think it's actually quite a good card. Meaning that if you play this as a 1-off or 2-off, then it might actually do better than playing 4 of these. Like your game plan might be better. Of course, if you combo with other cards, it's going to be very powerful. And I mean, if you combo this with Dauntless, then I guess it's kind of hurt the derp. Your opponent probably can't guard everything. But in my opinion, it's not actually like a big deal, because if you break ride with Dauntless, it might just be like any other Vanguard. Like, people probably just take the first hit, and if they have a perfect guard, they'll just use it. I mean, the really upside about break riding this with Dauntless and attacking is that your opponents can't get triggers. And I guess that's pretty good on its own, but I don't think it's not. I think break riding with DN or Amber Dragon might be actually better. And that's what I'll have to talk about this episode for Transcendent Dragon Draconic Novel Vague. Or Vague. And yeah, I know this episode's a bit longer than the rest, but I mean, this card's quite popular, and there is quite a bit of talk to, there's quite a bit of discussion topic onto this card. And we really have to see what the extra box have to release to give support to this. I know there's some cards that let you review this card to activate its effect for lower cost, but I'm hoping to see actually more cards and see what it can do. And see ya.